Welcome back to Lunchtime with Ira. My next guest is a veteran broadcaster and sportscaster here in Las Vegas. Sounds good, doesn't it?
It does. Makes me sound important.
Exactly. Ron Futrell, ladies and gentlemen. Ron's been a part of Las Vegas for many, many years, for decades, as a matter of fact. I'm now aging you rapidly, even before your very eyes.
That's fine. You are.
We like that. What brought you into sports initially, and then into sports broadcasting?
I always had a love for sports. Grew up in Southern California and loved doing sports. Got involved in radio when I was in Southern California and wanted to move into TV. And back in those days, you could do that much easier. Nowadays, it's much harder. You go and you try to you specialize, get TV degrees and that sort of stuff. And not too many people go into radio much anymore, unfortunately, because that business has changed so much. But started out in radio, got into TV, and have been doing this and living a dream, really, for 25 years in Vegas. Yeah.
When you start out, you mentioned Southern California. Can you be a little bit more specific? Where in Southern California?
Los Angeles.
Well, let's narrow it down.
Have you heard of LA?
Yes.
It's a little north of San Diego.
I was trying to get it down to like where in Southern California.
San Gabriel Valley is where I was from. I like to tell people I grew up in the barrios of East LA, which is about 30 miles east of LA, so it's really not the barrios, but it was a fun place to grow up. I loved growing up in LA in the 70s and just the mix of cultures and the life that you had there. It was a great progressive time, not unlike what Vegas is and has been for all the years you've been here, certainly. It's been a town that's pretty progressive, growth-oriented. And that part I loved of Southern California. Now I go back and it's jam-packed. You're always 50th in line for something. For an In-N-Out Burger, you're 50th in line. You know,
In-N-Wait Burger.
Yeah, wait. Okay. Right. And now that In-N-Out Burger's here in Las Vegas.
Then you knew Las Vegas arrived.
I'm fifth in line there.
Two things happened that I knew Las Vegas had arrived. One was In-N-Out Burger coming here, and the other one was Trader Joe's.
There's two, yes.
So once that happened, I knew that we were competing.
We're in good shape.
We're in good shape. So Las Vegas being the capital of so many things, convention capital of the world, entertainment capital of the world, dining capital of the world, I think pretty much accepted now. Is it going to become the sports capital of the world?
At one time, it looked like it could have been. And I'm going to sound like an old fogey when I talk about this, the good old days of Vegas sports. But I think it has, the sports landscape has changed remarkably over the years. Years ago, you had all the main boxing events that were here that were not just Las Vegas or national events. They were international events. And you had 4 fighters in the lower weight classes, the Hagler, Hearns, Leonard Duran. Anytime you put any 2 of those together, you really had a mega fight. I hear people talk about fights of the century or mega fights today, and I sit there and go, you know, Hagler Hearns was pretty big. It's hard to beat that, you know, or hard to beat some of those fights that were in the 80s and 90s. Then saw Mike Tyson's career come up from infancy. He was little at one time, and then grew in stature.
Little in age as well as size.
Yes, yeah. And then followed his career from start to finish here, and all the ups and downs and twists and turns of that. For locals, UNLV basketball, there was nothing that beat that time when they went to 3 Final Fours in 5 years, and Jerry Tarkanian reigned supreme here among locals, and the rise of that program to see it go to where it went, and then cover the fall of that program and some of the intricacies on why it fell and what happened there. Those were pretty big times. You had Agassi's career from start to finish. You know, and the careers of the Maddox brothers, Greg and Mike. You had Randall Cunningham playing here at UNLV, being an All-American as a punter, and then going on playing in the NFL for years, and now he's back here in town with a recording studio. So he had all of those things, and I'll see the younger sportscasters now and say, you know, there are some great things happening right now. UFC is remarkable. The NASCAR that came to town, you know, 12, 15 years ago, and that's gone to a great stature. Those are great and marvelous events. But those times were, I thought, because I was there, that they were pretty special.
Yeah, exactly. But do you see that, for example, I know there's been a talk of having a stadium here and having an arena and those kinds of things. Is that going to, do you think, be feasible in the near future or the far future?
At some point it has to happen, and we're talking about an arena that would be off-site from a hotel casino property, because I think that's the key right there. You have the arenas. Thomas & Mack is outdated. That's one of the problems with that. It was built in 83 is when it was first came online.
Will that still remain, though, as a facility?
Oh, absolutely it will. You can still do a lot of great things with that facility. It's still, but if you're talking about bringing in an NBA or an NHL franchise, they're going to want to have the latest and greatest. Right now at Mandalay Bay with their arena and with with the MGM Grand Garden, while you've got, again, great facilities with all three of these places, you don't have a place that the NBA and the NHL would like to have as a permanent home, I don't think, in those places. The people behind Bally's have talked about building one there. That would still be affiliated with a casino, and that some of the major sports franchises and entities would have a hard time with under the current environment. But I think that's changing. I think what you're going to see is a shift in the policies of the major sports leagues towards being more friendly, if you will, towards gambling and sports gambling, understanding that it happens everywhere. They need to know that.
And maybe that's the reason why, as it spreads throughout the states and in different forms, it's accepted more widely, and therefore it doesn't have whatever it was that kept these leagues from getting involved.
Yeah, you had a guy, the most celebrated case here recently, Tim Donaghy of the NBA, the NBA official who had gotten busted and admitted to fixing NBA games. Well, it's important to note, and I saw some of the reports on that said, oh no, this is really going to hurt Las Vegas and their quest to get an NBA team. Well, none of those bets that he placed illegally, and this is all a matter of record, were placed in Las Vegas. They were Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York, with bookies there. Illegal bookies in those places when he was doing what he was doing with the point shaving that he is admitted to. So I find it interesting that while Vegas is the one criticized because we have the image and our sports gambling is right out there in the open where everybody could see it,
regulated too.
Unregulated. The real problems are the under-the-table stuff that they have to concern themselves with, I believe.
Now, what's your favorite sport?
I love NASCAR. I'm a racing fan.
So you were excited when they came to Las Vegas?
Absolutely excited when they were coming to Las Vegas, and was a big part of the stories around the building of the Speedway. When you had a couple of old-timers here in Las Vegas, rest in peace now, you had Bill Bennett and Ralph Engelstad, who had put the money towards building that facility out there, and in conjunction with Richie Klein, who's still with us, and built that facility. And then later, Bruton Smith bought it. Chris Powell now runs it. Just incredible facility. I think what that has changed the sports landscape in Las Vegas, and it's the one sport that we're in year after year after year. We're in the big leagues. In motorsports. We are in the big leagues, and I like that.
Now, what is the appeal of motorsports to people? For people in our audience who may not understand what it is.
Visually, it's stimulating. It's a soap opera on wheels. If you get to know the drivers
right.
and who's doing what to who and where and behind the scenes and who hates who, and remember 3 years ago at Pocono when Tony Stewart got out of his car and tried to hit the one driver and he came back years later. No, and that sort of stuff. You got to remember who was doing what with who races previous, and that sort of soap opera is attractive, I think, to a lot of fans. Plus, it's visually stimulating to see the cars in high definition now going around the track at the speeds they're going, risking their lives. The sports of the future are the ones that fit in the box in the living room the best. And that's the NFL, that's NBA, that's all forms of motorsports. You can watch it in your living room, and it looks real good, especially in high def.
And with sound, you get the great sound coming through the sound stuff. Yeah, exactly.
The NBA, it works with that because it's an exciting league. You can what I like with the high definite, you can read the tattoos. You can tell that if Allen Iverson got a new edition, you can see it right there. He's got it on his neck, and you can read it, and you can see.
And you can read the ads on the cars.
Ads on the cars, and the tattoos on the players, and the same in the NFL.
Is there any challenge though for high def because of the speed? For example, in NASCAR, the speed of the cars and the angles you have to cover them, and where you mount the cameras. Are any of those challenges for high def?
No, in fact it makes it. They complement each other. It absolutely do complement that. Now that, because at first you just had the high def that was the overall picture, that just the most general shots, right. And they hadn't perfected high def in the cars. Now everybody's got the high def in the cars, so they got these little cameras inside the cars. And
it's transmitting back to the master control. Is that how it works?
Transmitting back,
amazing.
Just perfectly, and you've got a director now that has dozens and dozens of possibilities and angles. If you look, there's a car too that might have 3 or 4 different cameras on it, on the front bumper, on the rear bumper, on the interior. There's even cars when they race at Martinsville, because the brakes are important and you can see the brake drum heat up. There are cameras,
brake cams,
on the brake drums to see them go red hot when they're going in the corners of Martinsville.
So how does that camera? If you're putting that many cameras on a car, first of all, it's expensive, but
yes.
You're putting cameras on a car, you're going at tremendous speed. How does the vibration part be handled, and two, how come it doesn't just fall off?
Good question.
I know, that's why I asked you. You're the expert. Oh,
I don't know the technical stuff. I know when they do fall off, it's exciting because they'll show that.
Yeah.
Because it's probably because of a wreck and somebody hit somebody in turn 2.
Sure.
And so the camera flew off, and so they show that. But no, that's a good question. Technically, they have been able to do some remarkable things with these cameras to make sports more interesting. They have a camera in the track, sometimes buried down in the track, so you can see just the angle of the tires just barely missing the cars, and sometimes going over the top of the camera, buried within the asphalt of the track itself.
So I guess as the cost of cameras goes down, they're able to use more and more.
Oh, they lose a few.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
They do lose a few.
So this is sort of like the society of, as we've talked about in general, that there's cameras everywhere now. Obviously, you go to a store, you're being watched. You go to anywhere, you're being watched. So, but in that case, they're not only being watched, every part of the car is being watched. If it's NASCAR, or every part of the court, or if you're in NBA or whatever. I mean, there's cameras everywhere.
And it makes it more interesting for the viewers,
right,
is the bottom line. And that's where sports fits into this. Because there are few things left on TV that are live anymore. Think about it. And you have local news,
right,
and a lot of those segments are taped, but you have local news, and you have sporting events for the most part.
Or if there's a national disaster emergency, you'll go live. But and you're right, most of it's live.
That brings and that's what brings people into TV. When something happens, the cable TV ratings, when there's something of a national disaster or international significance, you will see the ratings go up tremendously because you have a 24-hour news cycle that's going all the time, nonstop.
When you're sitting in the comfort of your living room and you got the high-def television and you got some sporting event that you're just into, and let's say it's basketball, and a point is scored, do you find yourself jumping out of your chair and just doing a high five?
Acting like I'm there?
Yeah.
I find myself at sporting events, and I used to be the way where you'd sit in the press row, and of course you weren't cheering one way or another. It didn't matter. I didn't go to the Final Four with UNLV. Inside, you might be very happy they won the national championship, but outside, you're not standing up cheering. You can't do that and be professional. Now, I will go to Rebel football games, basketball games. I'll sit in the stands instead of in the press box most of the time, and I'll cheer right along.
As long as you're not reporting anything of that, you're fine.
I'll cheer like a fan and have a good time. And it's funny you mention that because I found that I restrained myself even at my kids' sporting events. As crazy as this sounds,
no, I understand.
I got so used to not cheering. When I'd watch my kids compete in sports, I would restrain myself. You know, and that was just something that I had just trained it. I had to focus and go, no, it's okay to cheer for Aaron, Tyler, Chelsea, Troy, whenever my kids, whenever they do something good on the field. I can, and nobody's going to judge me for that. But I had to consciously think of that.
Well, that's Ron Futrell. Thanks for being on the show.
It's my pleasure.
And I'm delighted we talked sports more than news because sports is always interesting.
More fun.
It is.